Welcome to the Black Belt Business Podcast. My name is Matthew Brenner, and today I am with Maya. She's the CEO and founder of Alchemize Fightwear, which is apparel and fightwear for women in jiu-jitsu and martial arts. So, Maya, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, for you, we met at a speech I was doing for entrepreneurs at a community that we're both a part of called Rec Philly. And the cool thing is when I met you, I'm like, oh, you're perfect. I need to have you on my show because we need more women involved in martial arts. And your company is designed for women to be more comfortable on the mat. So I guess my question for you to start is why are not more women involved in martial arts or specifically, let's say jujitsu?
Yeah, so maybe a good way to illustrate this is to talk about how I got involved in martial arts in
Mhm.
general. So I walked into a Brazilian jiu-jitsu studio thinking it was fitness kickboxing.
Mm.
I had taken like a self-defense seminar, and at the end of the seminar, they had said, it's Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu, ninjutsu. The guy that was teaching the seminar was a black belt in ninjutsu, which now being involved in the martial arts world, I'm like, is that really real? But um, I didn't know anything about martial arts. And I think that's the truth for a lot of women. Like, we don't grow up fighting. We don't grow up with that kind of like rough and tough culture that a lot of boys grow up with, where they're wrestling their friends and they have an awareness of fighting. They might have an awareness of UFC. I walked in thinking it was a fitness kickboxing class. And if you had told me that I would be rolling on the floor with a bunch of sweaty men, I would have said, never in my
Mm.
life. Even I had a friend who wrestled in high school, and I was like, that's cool that she's doing that, but that's not for me.
Mm.
Now I do stand up too, like I wrestle on top of my jujitsu, but um, I think a lot of women just don't ever imagine themselves doing fight sports because one, there's not a lot of examples, and I think there's two, we don't grow up with it, and I think there's just a perception of that's not for women like
Mm.
me. I had a conversation the other day with a friend who was like, I want to do fight sports, but like I like how I keep my nails. And I'm like, well, you can keep your nails, but people feel like those things are mutually exclusive.
Mm. See, I wouldn't know how to answer that if someone asked me that question. Like, excuse me, like, how do I keep my nails? Okay, I'm like, I don't know. Let's go ask this other female student. But now that you say that, I should know the answer to that,
Yeah,
right?
a lot of women just like really want to keep their
Mm.
femininity, and they see a lot of, I mean, even going to the gym, lifting, which has been around
Mm.
for forever, and everyone knows like lifting is not going to make you bulky.
Yeah.
Still, women think it's antagonistic to their femininity. And so
Mm.
then now you throw in, you're going to have your hair ripped out and you're going to be sweating, you're going to be rolling with men. It's so intimidating for a woman to get involved in that. And there's
Mm.
just not the same self concept of, I'm the type of woman that does this thing.
Mm. So you thought you were going to a fitness kickboxing class, but then you
Yeah.
walked into a jujitsu class.
Yeah.
And for those who maybe aren't as familiar, jujitsu is kind of like a martial arts wrestling, right? So
Hmm.
it's like wrestling, but you try to choke someone out or make them submit in certain positions. So what made you stay when you saw that it wasn't what you thought it was? And there's a bunch of like usually men between the age of 20 and 45, right? That look probably pretty athletic for the most part and smells disgusting. What made you stay there?
So I started training. I was living overseas, actually. I was living in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And
I don't even know what words you just said.
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, it's
Yeah.
it's kind of close to Thailand, the country of
Okay.
Malaysia. It's between Thailand and Singapore.
Why were
And
you there?
I moved over there in high school. My whole family moved over there. They lived over there for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. I was only there for a couple of years and I came back to the US. But the reason I even started martial arts was I was a lifelong soccer player
Mm.
and I wanted to continue to do something. I didn't think I wanted to go back to the US and play soccer in college, but I knew I needed to stay active. And so I was just kind of in this phase of I'm going to try a bunch of stuff, hence fitness kickboxing, which was actually jujitsu. And when I walked into that classroom or the academy, the interesting thing about Kuala Lumpur is there was a huge women's team. Like
Mm.
there were maybe 15 to 20 girls on the mat.
Wow.
And that's pretty unique. Even in some of the biggest schools in the US, you don't see 15 to 20 girls on the mat
Absolutely
on a
not.
random Tuesday night. And we were in Southeast Asia. A lot of the women were smaller. They were more petite. And I'm seeing them kick ass. Can I cuss?
Yes.
Okay. I'm seeing them kick ass against these guys who are like double their size. And I was just so fascinated. It wasn't like these guys were letting them win or anything, but these women felt so strong, so powerful, so capable, and looked like they were having so much fun. And then one thing that I started to experience as I started doing jujitsu more, even that first day, I was like, I'm so bad at this. I'm so uncomfortable. I'm doing close guard to high guard to triangle with my coach at the time. And I'm like, this is so weird to have my legs. I was like 17, my legs wrapped around this grown man. Um, but I was like, "I think there's something here," you know? It feels playful to, like, go and try and pass someone's
Mm,
guard. It feels fun, it feels challenging, and so it just kinda put this spark in me of, like, I wanna learn a little bit more about this sport, and after maybe 2 weeks, I bought my first gi, and I was like, "This is my life. This
mm.
is what I'm doing."
So when you started training, let's say that first day, you're with a grown man. You're 17 years old, you said,
Mhm.
and you're with a grown man, and in a position physically, right? Your legs are wrapped around him that you're not really used to,
Yeah.
right? Were you like, oh, okay, this is playful, so I'm gonna keep on doing it, or is there someone you connected with there? Like, did they put you with another female as a partner? Like, usually martial arts schools will do that so people become more comfortable.
Yeah, they put me with another female, so when I was with my coach, I was uncomfortable the whole time,
Mm.
basically. Like, I was
Do you
like,
think he sensed it?
"Probably."
Okay.
I think he for whatever reason, just thought I should do this sport. I think we've had the coach that I started with, we have like a connection, and he was like, I think this is really good for you, like this discipline. And I didn't have a lot of confidence at that time in my life. And I think he sensed that jujitsu would really help me as a person with my confidence. And so um, I was not comfortable when I was training with him. But then he put me with his wife, and, um, I'm training with her, and I'm just, like, flopping, like, I'm, like, trying to pass her guard I don't know what I'm doing, like, I'm
Yeah.
just
Right.
flopping on her, spastic. I was probably spastic for, like, 2 years, you know, just, like, crazy all over people,
Yeah.
um, and, I don't know if it was that first practice or if it was a couple practices in, but I was just like, "This is so fun." Like, I feel like, I was a child, but I feel like a young child, like, running around
Mm,
someone, trying to I think passing more than anything was the most exciting, and, like, trying to submit someone, kind of waking up this aggression too that I think a lot of women are not permitted to feel. Like, we
mm,
don't have outlets for our
mm,
aggression. Everyone has it, you're a person, but I think just as jujitsu can be really helpful for men to be able to have a healthy outlet for that aggression and a place to be present and be physical with other people, women need that too. And there's no place for most women to go and access that.
Especially in like a safe, playful fight setting,
Yeah.
right? Like I always feel like jujitsu for me is the most fun when I see it as I feel like I'm a little kid and I'm wrestling with like, my brother or something, right?
Yeah.
And because I'm not, yes, I want to submit the person and they're trying to submit me and put me in a very uncomfortable position, but I know they're not actually going to hurt me,
Yeah.
right? And that's what makes it so joyful and so fun. It's like for me, I'm not super competitive. Like I don't compete in any tournaments or
Yeah.
doing that. That stuff's awesome if you want to do it. I go there because I wanna have fun and I wanna, like, work out and I wanna learn the self-defense aspect, but I don't necessarily want to, win any gold medals. It's not where I'm at in my life right now.
Hmm.
So I think when people go into it and they are intimidated, just think like you're like a little kid wrestling with someone, right? And you
Hmm.
know that you're not gonna hit your head on the dining room table, right? Like, you're gonna be in a safe environment where people are watching over you
Yeah.
and the other person cares about you. They're really not trying to actually hurt you, right? They're trying to play hurt you,
Hmm.
right? So after you took that class and a couple weeks later you joined, you got a uniform, right? And eventually you started a fightwear company
Yeah.
for, Alchemize for women. But what was it like when you put on that uniform the first time? Because we have a lot of martial artists who are female, right? Now we teach karate.
Yeah.
So a little bit different, but still, they're not designed to fit women's bodies. They're
Yeah.
clunky, they're square. You have to be the exact ratio of like height and width in order to fit this exact box. And
Hmm.
even for me, like I'm 5'6", right? I put on a uniform and the pants are always way too long. So I always have to have them hemmed. I'm
Yeah.
wearing like a kid-sized top, right? Like nothing ever fits the right way. It always needs to be adjusted. So for women, whenever I hand them a uniform, I say, hey, just a heads up, these are really not designed for women. It's gonna be a little bit uncomfortable. What I want to make sure is you feel comfortable around the waist. So don't worry about the pants length as much. You can always get it adjusted.
Hmm.
But we need better uniforms for women. So at what point in your training were you like, hey, I'm actually gonna do something about this?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, when I put on that uniform, I was like, "What am I wearing?"
Mm.
It was a huge I felt like I was wearing a burlap sack. And my issue is not necessarily with gis as much. I think, like, there are some good gi options for women. We're working on a gi really hard right now that, is better, but, um, I felt like, "What was I wearing?" You know, it was 2 sizes too big. There's pictures of me in the ski, and it's, like, over my fingertips, and
Mm.
it was massive, and a lot of women are bigger on the bottom than they are on top, or they're just different sized. They maybe have shorter legs, and they're having that exact problem that you talked about, where they can't find something that fits, and there's not a lot of guidance for women, nor has there been any kind of thoughtful design. But the issue that I actually had was I started training no-gi jiu-jitsu, which is when you're not wearing the kimono, you're wearing, like, a rash guard and spats and shorts. I'm telling you something you know, but,
No, that's okay. For anyone
um
that's listening, a rash guard is like a really tight shirt. That way you don't get a rash when you train because it's really sweaty and you're not always grabbing skin to skin. So just like a really tight long sleeve shirt and tight pants, like a almost like leggings, right?
yeah. And I was looking everywhere. I had these, like, cotton leggings. I don't know, maybe from Old Navy or something.
Okay.
Cotton is horrible to wear to jujitsu. You definitely shouldn't be wearing cotton.
Wait, why is
But
cotton bad?
because cotton stretches. Like, you know, when people
Oh
wear those
yeah, yeah.
cotton
So
T-shirts and it's
yeah,
just, like, stretching and your fingers and your toes are stuck in the garment?
yeah.
And I mean, the reason that you need to wear something that's tight is so you don't break your fingers and your toes, and in jujitsu and no-gi, you're not grabbing onto the clothing, and so you don't want it to be something that people can't even grab onto.
Mm.
It's an issue for your training, and so, um, I'm wearing these cotton leggings, and I'm wearing just, like, a dry fit T-shirt that's a little bit loose, and I couldn't find anything that was out there for me that fit. And even some of my friends underneath their gis, they're wearing, like, one-piece swimsuits to keep the thing down. Not
It's
joking.
actually a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Yeah.
Better idea is wear a singlet, which we sell, but,
Okay.
they were wearing one-piece swimsuits, so it would, like, not come down, and so they'd be covered, and so I was just seeing that women were doing all these inventive things, wearing gear that was not jujitsu gear to jujitsu to try and make it work,
Mhm.
um, and I ended up settling on this Nike stretch compression shirt that was a men's shirt that was 2 sizes too small, so I could get the jujitsu fit.
Mm.
And at some point, I started thinking about I've always been entrepreneurial. I was like, there's definitely a way to do this better. There were a couple companies out there already, like Fuji and Tatami, that were making a couple women's pieces, but they were like hot pink and purple. And still, they just like shrunk it and made it hot pink. That was what
Yeah.
women's gear was on the
Yeah.
market. And I realized that women had really unique needs. And I started talking to my friends in the locker room. And I was like, do you like this brand? And what do you like about it? What do you not? And, I just kinda started keeping a list, and eventually I went on to interview over 100 people. I put something in a Facebook group, and I was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna try and make better jujitsu gear, and I'd love to interview you, and I'll give you a discount on your first order." And so I worked with these customers to develop one product, a rash guard, that fit better. And what we did was we cut it in at the waist so it fit better. We made it out of a nicer material because a lot of rash guards smell over time and they just like have fibers that stick up. They don't stay well. We used better inks that we imported from Italy. We made it like 3 inches longer on the bottom and we added a silicone band so it stayed in place. And
On the when you say the bottom, you mean the pants or the top?
on the bottom of the rash guard
The
so
bottom
that
of the
it
rash
had
guard.
more room to move up the body without exposing your stomach.
Got it. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so it could be tucked in shorts. It could also just like sit on your hips and you're rolling and your rash guard's not up above your head because that
Right.
was happening to me. There's this photo. We're starting to pitch investors right now, and there's this photo in our slide deck of me in competition choking this girl, and her shirt's like up like this. And I've been there, and every woman who trains has been there. And when you're in a room full of a ton of guys, you don't want to be exposed like that for a
Yeah.
bunch of reasons. Like maybe you feel uncomfortable. Maybe you just had a baby and you're not comfortable about your stomach. Like there's a million reasons that you just don't want to be exposed like that when you're training. And it was really something that was interfering with my training and a lot of women's training when you're thinking about keeping your gear in place. More, how many times have I given up position or submission because I'm trying to adjust my clothes?
Mm.
And men don't worry about that. So if you fix that problem for women, you end up making them more successful in the training room and they're having more fun too.
Mm. So I've heard this marketing term, and it's funny that you even started to say, or you kind of said it, which is like when you want a product for women, what most companies do is they pink it and shrink it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, no, we need better, something better than that, right? I feel like that's such a just like easy way out and to get to capture some women, but most But, there's gonna be a lot of women that don't just, you know, accept that small level of detail change in order
Yeah.
to actually impact how they actually train. So you said something about it being, come in on the waist, but it goes lower, so it goes lower on the legs and it comes in on the waist more, like, over here? Is that
Yeah.
what you mean? And why is that better? So it's, like, harder to grip? Or, like, how's that different than a men's rash guard?
One, it fits the woman's body, so it's more
Okay,
flattering, it's more comfortable.
okay.
The other thing is if it's fitted through the waist and through the hip, it's less likely to move up. So if you
Okay,
have a
that's what you're
bunch of
saying.
gapping, then the shirt's just gonna fly up as soon as you invert or you just are playing a guard where your legs are in the air or something. It's gonna move up immediately. But
Hmm.
if it's fitted through your torso and then it's gripping at the bottom either with the band or with the extra fabric, it's anchoring lower on your body and you're gonna stay covered for longer.
Did you have experience designing clothing before this?
No,
So how the hell, like, if someone said to me, "You have to design a shirt," like, maybe I'll find someone on Fiverr?
so I mean, I started the brand with $2,000 from my summer job and, like, no experience, and so it was started in my college dorm room. Um, I took a rash guard that I had, and I found some suppliers on Alibaba in the beginning, and I just started sending them designs. Like, I was like, "Please take this in 1 inch and move this down 2 centimeters, and I want the seam like this," and I just started studying online, trying to figure out, "How do I make a tech pack? How do I get design work done?" And asking those questions. But initially, all of those design edits were happening on my own body,
Mm,
and then with time, we've gotten more sophisticated. Now we own every step of the manufacturing process. We do some full package overseas, but we have built out manufacturing here that is our contractors in the USA
mm,
over this last year. And so that takes so much more sophistication. But I didn't start knowing how to do any of it. I didn't
mm,
even have personal social media when I started the brand.
mm.
So growing a community online was all new too. Um,
Did you ever think, "Oh, why don't I just make a line for Fuji or one of the big companies that already exist as opposed to starting my own line?"
I knew I wanted to work for myself.
Mm,
I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've been entrepreneurial my whole life. Always like some club or some business that I was selling dog treats around the neighborhood or like earrings that I made or I was threading eyebrows out of my dorm room in college. I always had something since maybe I was 10 years old.
mm,
And I knew I wanted to work for myself and didn't want to work for a boss. But I had messaged those companies like, let me work for you. Like, let me work for you, like on it or albino and Pareto. I'll work for free. Like, I want to learn. No one would get back to me. I
mm,
think even like that's something that's been very true throughout the history of the business is I've messaged marketplaces and I'm like, "Hey, like my gear is selling hundreds of thousands of dollars in this style. You should have this style." But because jujitsu is so male dominated, people don't care about the
mm,
needs of women. Like these
mm,
big fightwear marketplaces, they don't care. And so it's like, okay, you just continue to work and build it more and more until it's undeniable. And I think that you can turn those rejections into fuel, being like, I know that there's something here because it's my problem.
mm. Do you feel like the popularity of women in combat sports is growing or shrinking?
Growing. Women's wrestling is not to change from jujitsu, but I think we're a company that's going into multiple categories. Women's wrestling is the fastest growing high school or collegiate sport in the US today.
Wow.
And most schools right now don't even have dedicated women's wrestling teams. But women are going on the male roster, and then those wrestling teams are emerging. Um, and then in jujitsu classes, and I'm sure you see this going to a jujitsu school and maybe even in karate as well. Like those kids' classes are like packed with little girls, more so than little boys. I
Mm.
think it's so top of mind for parents and for people as well. Women knowing how to defend themselves, women um, knowing how to just master their environment in a way that just wasn't a conversation before, you know?
So why do you think that is? Like, why do you think it's becoming more popular or accepted for women to try combat sports?
I think women weren't even in the UFC. Like Dana White was saying, women will never be in MMA just 10 years ago. And so it's taken some time for women to be welcomed into martial arts spaces. And I think there's still a lot of prejudice against women in martial arts spaces. Like I've been training for years And I used to have a partner that trained too, and we would go to visit different gyms. The reaction I get walking into a gym, even though we had the same experience level, totally different than the reaction he gets walking into a gym. People are like so excited to meet him. Where do you train? This, that, the other thing. And I don't mind. Like it is just what it is to be a woman in jiu-jitsu. But I think that response of people just being neutral to you is new. People used to be like, women should not be here,
Mm,
you know? And so that changing of culture in martial arts gyms, I think, is allowing more and more women to thrive.
mm,
And even so, in the jujitsu space, you see every 6 months there's some assault case or some harassment case that's happening. And as the culture in gyms becomes safer for women, I think more and more women start to blossom, and women are now higher belts and in leadership and bringing other women into the community.
mm. Yeah, with karate, it's a little bit different because there's not as much close physical contact. So
Yeah.
women have been involved for a pretty long time, especially since the uniforms aren't women friendly, but like I would say the classes could be very women friendly. Like we're very aware of exercises also that women don't like, right? Like we
Mhm.
know women don't really like jumping jacks. It's like uncomfortable for them to go up and down, right?
Mhm.
And so we specifically gear the classes where they feel like welcomed and encouraged. It really doesn't matter whether you're male or female because there's not that same head-to-head combat
Yeah.
feel. And we'll do combat, but it's always like light touch, right? It's
Mhm.
never like, all right, you're about to get blasted by, some 27-year-old dude who like lifts 6 days a week and you're gonna get blasted in the face. Um, but let's say you're talking to a friend and you're like, hey, you should start jujitsu, and it's a female friend. How do you convince her? Like, what do you say to her?
It depends why she would wanna start jujitsu, but I think that the benefits of jujitsu for women are beyond self-defense. I think, like, women have a lot of hangups around even just taking up space in the world. Like, jujitsu teaches you it's good to take up space, and it's good to make your presence known and, like, put pressure on someone. Like, so many women are trying to move gingerly through the world and, like, not ever be felt and not ever get in anyone's way. And I think that lesson is so visceral of, I can take up space, I can put pressure, I can be here, and it's fine, you know? I think there is a lot to self-defense and learning how to master your environment, be aware of your surroundings, keep the distance between you and another person. But I think it is the benefits of jujitsu or the community are that it can return you to like a very childlike, playful state where you're just like learning something because it's fun and rolling around with your friends. It's a great outlet for aggression. It's a great way to make yourself present. The one thing we're doing all these interviews right now with athletes and filming their stories for Alchemize, and the one thing we hear over and over is jujitsu helped me overcome my anxiety. It helped me be in the present moment. And I think we all chase different things that bring us into the present moment, like we were talking about with you and the outdoors. But I think jujitsu is something that does that for everyone. And that's something that's so elusive right now for people when we're all on our devices 24/7 and thinking about the future. What activities can you bring into your life that just, like, force you to be here now? And when someone's choking you out, you're not thinking about, like, your fight with your boyfriend or your business. You're thinking about, "Okay, how do I get out of this situation and survive to the next moment?" Um, so I think that's the core benefit. It's much bigger than self-defense for women.
Do you ever try to like convince your friends, maybe who don't ask you, but you have like a friend, you're like, hey, I think you would love it. Here, like you should do it because it's gonna help you stay present, help with your anxiety, help with your self-defense or confidence. Or do you wait till they bring it up to you?
I don't know if I try and convince my friends anymore. I think when I was, there was a time in my life when I was in college where I was driving 4 hours a day to train jujitsu. I was spending all my money in jujitsu. I was living in an RV, like, so I could just train jujitsu. Like, that's all I cared about.
You're a
And
jujitsu hippie.
I was a jujitsu hippie. And now I'm not a jujitsu hippie. I'm like
Okay.
focused on the business, and like jujitsu will have another season in my life,
Yeah.
But for years, I was like, jujitsu was the only thing. And I would definitely be an evangelist to my friends during that period of time. And I think what I realized is, especially for women, like, there are just a lot of people who are like, I will never do it. But as they get exposed more and more to the space and the other people in it, they're like, oh, those people are just like me. Like, I'm
Mm.
seeing that with my mom. My mom is in her mid 50s, and she comes with me to all my events. Like, we throw these camps around the country. And we went to Jiu Jitsu Con in Vegas this year, and we had a table. And she meets people, and she's like, that woman is my age and she's training. And now I'm seeing she used to be like, I'm never going to do this. This is a horrible sport. And she's like, I'll get on the mat at your next
Mhm.
event. And I think that exposure to the community and realizing these people aren't just like these crazy meatheads, like they're nice people who just are chasing the present moment, maybe, or chasing an active lifestyle is what will convince someone. But I don't think it's my job to evangelize it to people.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. And like, I'll certain friends, I'll be like, hey, you should do this, especially if I feel like maybe they could use a little bit of a like ego check
Yeah.
because it's also super helpful for that. And that's like
Mhm.
one benefit, especially for men, where maybe you started making more money in your like 30s, right? Or any age really, but especially like you start to become more of a professional and you haven't been challenged in a while. You might go to the gym and lift some weights and breathe heavy and stuff, or maybe go for runs, but you never really challenge like with another person in front of you. And every guy thinks a couple things. They think they're really good drivers, right? All guys think they're really good in bed. They think they're really funny, and they all think they're gonna win every fight because even though they've never actually been in a fight, right? Like they just think I'm gonna know what to do in that moment, right? And until you have someone that you practice with in front of you and actually do those movements in a safe way, then you never really know. Like it's just theory. It's just a dream you have in your head, right?
Mhm.
So there will be some friends I'm like, hey, you should come do this, kind of because I want them to get their ass kicked and see like, oh yeah, like see that girl over there who weighs like 120, like I know she's gonna whoop your ass. So like, here, come out there, right? Because that
Yeah.
girl whips my ass, right? So,
Yeah.
and they couldn't even imagine that, right? They could never imagine any female who's especially that weighs less than them,
Mhm.
right, could ever possibly put them in a physically harmful situation. And whenever that does happen, I'm like, yes, and they feel really good about it, right? They're always like happy they did it. Uh, so if you're gonna have women feel more comfortable in martial arts besides the uniform, okay,
Mhm.
so they're gonna walk into a jujitsu class or a martial arts class. What do you think they need to see in order to feel more comfortable on the mat? They're like, okay, I'm gonna stick this out.
Yeah, so I think one really great way to make women feel more comfortable if you want to build a women's team is having women there and having women in leadership. So if I go to an open mat or if I was shopping for a new school, new academy, one thing I would look for is like how many upper belts here are women? Because jujitsu is hard, just like business, just like a lot of things. And people get weeded out very quickly. But if women are getting weeded out disproportionately so and never making it to that purple belt, brown belt, black belt level, something's going on. Either it's a new school and that happens, or maybe it's not those women aren't really being supported in their ventures there. So I'm looking to see higher level women, women in leadership, women who are teaching classes a lot of times, I think is a great sign. And then other women who are on the mat, who are coming consistently. Um, if I'm at that gym for a little while, I want to see, are women greeted the same way? Are they included in conversations? Um, I think a lot of guys that I've spoken to have said, I don't wanna ask a girl to roll because I don't wanna be creepy. Like, it comes from a good place. They're like, I don't want them to think I'm hitting on them or whatever. Women who train just wanna be treated as equals. Like, they don't want you to try and murder them. They don't want you to try and go easy on them. They want you to play technical jujitsu with them and to ask them to roll too. And it's that simple. Um, I think a lot of gyms overcomplicate it by, uh saying, you should roll 50% lighter with women. That's not serving anyone in the academy. It's just about playing technical jujitsu, not using all of your muscle, all of your strength, which you shouldn't be doing with anyone, not even another male who's your size. You should be playing with the technique, um, and treating people like human beings.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things my instructor says is A, don't be weird,
Mhm.
and B, just train with them as you would someone who's about the same size and about the same strength level, right?
Yeah.
Like whether male or female. Like, so if the person's like I don't know, it's a 280 pound, you know, like buffalo man, right? And it's a woman who's 120 pounds. Don't just like lay on them the whole time so they can't get up. Like pretend that that they're you work with them as if that whether it's a male or female, that they're a 120-pound person,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise it's not fun. Like, and I think only beginners would get nervous to ask someone like, be to roll to not or to they would be nervous to ask someone to roll because they think the person be hitting on you. Like that's like
I've heard it from so many men.
really
From
that's so
so many
weird. Like
men.
why? That's what everyone's there for.
Yeah. No,
They still think it that way.
I've heard it from so many men. I think, like, the things that make you creepy is, like, you don't need to DM me after the roll and be like, "Oh, thanks for the roll today," you know? Like,
Okay, you think that's when it's creepy?
it's not that creepy, it's just, like, not necessary, you know?
You don't think
Like,
they do that to other men?
not as much,
I
you
get
know?
DMs every day.
Really?
No, I've never got one DM.
Okay,
But
yeah.
now I'm mad. I'm like, someone hit me up. Like, yo, thanks, Matt. You're a great
If
training
I go
partner.
to an open mat, like, without fail, I leave with a DM, "Thanks for the roll."
Mm,
And it's
mm.
just, like, it's weird,
Well, that
you
probably is
know?
someone hitting on you then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. Okay.
unnecessary, and then it makes you uncomfortable if, like, you train there, it's your home gym, like, you don't wanna relationships happen, but, like, you don't it just can be weird, you know?
Yeah.
So don't be weird, don't let that person train, let them do their thing, but ask someone to roll, it's totally fine.
I also feel it's important, especially in the beginning, that when a new person comes in, male or female,
Mhm.
that they have a partner that kind of looks like them,
Yeah.
right? Like, so if it's a 45-year-old woman for the first time, they're with a partner who's like around their 40s, right? That's
Mhm.
gonna work well with them, and they can connect on a certain level. Don't pair them up with a 19-year-old guy who's wrestled throughout high school,
Yeah.
right? And that they can train with that person safely later for sure. But in the beginning, you really got to like handhold to make like comfort is the most important thing. We always say connection before correction,
Mhm.
right? You can't just correct someone or give them criticism or try to show them how to do something better. You have to let them connect first, and then they'll be more likely to receive any way you try to help them. So I think that part of it is really really important too. Um, what about women who do other styles of martial arts? Do you feel like their gear or the gear you have at Alchemize Fightwear, do you think that could help them? Like if they're doing judo or or karate or something?
Yeah, so in particular, right now we have this focus on wrestling because wrestling is growing and the wrestling singlets are crazy. One of my team members, her daughter just started wrestling and she's like, Maya, I need to get these singlets over to these girls at this high school because the girls are wearing a sports bra and then they're wearing a t-shirt or a rash guard underneath and then they're wearing the singlet on top. And on bottom, it's a sublimated material. So it's like a white material that's printed on with ink. And when you stretch it, it's white or it's see-through. And so our singlets, one, they have the internal bra, they have a high neck, so you don't need to wear these 3 layers on top. But then on bottom, instead of having to wear a compression short underneath or even something over the top, it has a double panel, so it's never see-through. It
Mm,
doesn't have the center seam, which, like, cuts women where you don't wanna be cut, and it's just a flattering garment that fits well, that's gonna stay in place,
mm.
you know? It ends on your thigh at the smallest part of your leg, so it's not rolling up the whole time. You don't have to worry about pulling it down. So, there's just a lot of innovation that can happen in all of these martial arts by thinking about, what do women actually need to not focus on their gear? That's the point. Like, everyone wants to feel confident in what they're wearing in the training room, that's part of it, but the biggest part of it is, like, it should not distract from what you're there to do, and right now, it does distract the gear because 'cause you're thinking about, "Oh, I need to pull it down because my butt cheek is gonna be exposed in the middle of my wrestling match," and then stuff happens like that. It could be a moment there where now you lose the position and that's your match.
Hmm.
So removing some of those barriers and that mental load from women is what we try and do with the gear.
I love how much thought you put into it, and because it's not my body or my concern, I guess I've never been through it personally. Like
Mhm.
all the layers you're talking about of like insecurity you might have about your gi is so insightful for me,
Yeah.
and I think it's going to make me a better teacher because now I understand a little bit more about what they're actually thinking. So I'm usually thinking about movements that may make people feel uncomfortable, not how their attire will make them feel uncomfortable by doing certain movements.
Yeah.
So I think that's another level of care that we can have for our female students. And we have a lot of female students like karate. There's probably 50%, honestly. And we have
Wow.
our co-founder is female of our organization of our 30 plus martial arts schools. And a lot of our head people, like we have a lot of female leadership, school owners, head instructors, program directors. So I think we're really good about that. I think what we need to do better is with the gear. So if you get us like a karate uniform or something that could be used for karate, I don't know, maybe, or a kimono or like anything like that, I feel like We would love that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, we can
putting it
talk
putting in
about
the
it.
word, putting in the word, just like let that sit good for a while. Um, so now that you're running the business, do you train often or not at all right now? Like, where are you at? Like,
Right right now, less consistently. So, I was training a few times a week for a while, like 3, and I went from 6 times a week, sometimes twice a day, to 3. And now I trained on Sunday. I'm gonna train tomorrow or tonight, actually. I'm gonna go to an open mat, but I don't have a home school at the moment. I have somewhere where I will go back to, but I'm not paying a membership. But right now, I'm just in the grind of building the business. And I think just like in jujitsu, when you have big goals in the jujitsu space and you're like a serious practitioner, it takes sacrifice. And so right now, I'm in my early 20s, mid 20s now, I guess. I'm 25. And I am just focused on building the business, and there will be time to be on the mat. But I don't want to get too disconnected where I forget about the community and what the sport is and what's current. Um, so it's kind of a balance. I'm looking to be back on the mat more.
so I know one of the things you've done is build a huge community of 40,000 plus women, and no ad spend. I think, right? That's all
Until last year, end of
until last
last
year.
year.
Okay, but before that, it was all organic marketing
Yeah.
strategies. So for a lot of martial arts schools, including ours, 40,000 would be like insane. Like that's not even like a number that I could imagine even getting. So how did you build that community? Like, what did you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it was that kind of customer discovery in the beginning, asking women what did they need, involving the community already, leveraging like a community that already existed with Facebook groups, and asking these women what they wanted from their gear and saying, hey, we're trying to serve you. So that kind of gave us the basis. But when I launched the brand, when I spent $2,000 on our first product, I had like 100 followers on Instagram, like nothing, you know? And that was really a mistake. And I realized, okay, I need to build the audience before I build the product because I could spend a lot of money like just tying it up in inventory and then have no one to sell this to. And I mean, I had no money to spend on a ton of inventory. So I luckily didn't run into this issue.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of founders do that where they spend thousands of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars if they raise funding on a whole line or a whole product going to market. And then they're like, no one even wants this. I didn't even build the audience that I can sell this to.
Mm.
And so I realized that on a really small level with a micro failure. And I was like, okay, I'm going to spend time building the audience. So I would just like take videos on my phone talking about the products, like take photos of different girls. I was sending it out, gifting it to people. And I was throwing a ton of stuff at the wall, and the first thing that really stuck for us was I started making these comics. I found this girl who I would pay her like $50 to do a comic, and we would make a comic about something funny in women's jujitsu, like, oh, I didn't tap to the armbar, I tapped to my own hair getting stuck under my back, you know,
Okay.
or like before jujitsu, like my nails were so nice and beautiful, and now after jujitsu, like I have cuts on all my fingers from playing spider guard, and like that's so relatable for women in jujitsu. Or every single woman in jujitsu gets asked, it's kind of politically incorrect maybe, but gets asked if they're being abused at home. I've been asked in every workplace I've ever had, like, are you okay? Because you have bruises everywhere from jujitsu. And so just speaking to these funny experiences that are really relevant for women in our community, that's super shareable.
Mm.
You could do that through video, you could do that through comics like we started. And then we just started serving the community through content. So we were like, what does a girl who's coming into jujitsu want to know? What does a girl in the middle of her jujitsu experience, like at blue belt level, want to know? And can we speak to that with content and make stuff that is relatable and that's going to provide value? So the whole community has been built on that, providing value and then selling the products and then
Mm.
being real people. Like me and my team, they're all women who train jujitsu, and they are the faces of the brand too, as much as me, just sharing about the products and what we're trying to do.
What I love is you're so in the mind of your customer, like you know your avatar,
Yeah.
and you're not selling the product first. You're like, oh, here's what a woman might feel. And then by the way, once they get to know you, like you, and trust you, then oh, by the way, we have this product, right? And I think that always builds customer trust and then more likely to purchase from you first or from you later, right?
Yeah.
And like you asked me earlier why I started this podcast, right? And the reason why I started this podcast, besides that it's super fun, I just love doing it. I never sit in this room and go, "Oh God, I can't wait for this to be over." I'm always like, well, I might be like, "Oh, when is she gonna stop coughing?" No, I'm just kidding. Um, I'm always like very, very excited to talk to the person, and it always goes by super fast. So I just enjoy the process of it. But the other thing is that so people get to know, like, and trust me, right? And I'm not talking about my consulting services throughout the podcast or
Mhm.
talking about what I do and blah blah blah. We're just having a conversation that's going to be helpful. And then if someone finds that helpful and like likes me, they're gonna naturally be like, "Oh, I saw you do coaching. Maybe you can help me because I want to grow my martial arts school." Right.
Yeah.
And I think if you have a student that comes into your martial arts school and you just try to help them get whatever they want, it's them enrolling is going to be natural and easy. It doesn't have to be the most drawn out sales process where you got to do all the right steps at exactly the right time because they're just going to know, like, and trust you,
Yeah.
right? And feel like you're listening to whatever their needs are, right?
Mhm.
And too often people are like almost like a gym membership where you go and be like, okay, you get a free trial for today, like one class. All right, here's our memberships. Do you want to do it? And it's like, okay, yeah, let me think about it, or I'll get back to you. And it's like, do we even find out what they're even here for? Like, what's the reason why this person is here, right? You took so much time to find out why women don't feel comfortable in traditional uniforms, right? And
Mhm.
what specifically do they need in order to make those uniforms more comfortable, those rash guards more comfortable? Then now they're automatically going to trust you, right? You come out with a new gear, they're going to know you put the thought and effort into it, and they're going
Yeah.
to naturally want to join with you. So I think it's so cool that you went audience first because I think most people fall into that trap is like sell, 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 sell. When that's important, you need to sell to support yourself, right?
Mhm.
Maybe you're a little bit younger, so you didn't have as many expenses. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you did. I don't know.
I didn't have that many expenses, but I was working full time
Okay.
for
And
until 2 years ago.
oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So you had another job.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. When I started, I didn't have another job. I was just working in martial arts, but I was living in my parents' house in my mom's basement. So
Mhm.
my expenses were minimal, right? So the first year when I made around $5,000 in personal income,
Yeah.
like it wasn't like I was living on the street. Like I had somewhere to be, somewhere to get food. It was okay. So I had that safety net, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have that. And I think if you start to find out what your community actually wants, and also if you make it funny, like you guys did, like comic, it's almost like building through like a meme page,
Yeah.
right? We had on here one of the guests I had was McDojo Life,
Okay.
Rob.
Yeah.
So he was teaching martial arts, and then, by the way, so if you don't follow, it's at McDojo Life, or at just McDojo. Oh my God, one of the two. Super popular account. It has like hundreds of thousands of followers. Joe Rogan talks about him all the time, and he was teaching martial arts, but then he wanted to like expose like bullshit martial arts where, someone comes and attack me and you look at them and they fly back, right? And all these like silly things where people that are abusive to their students,
Mhm.
right? Or get in trouble with the law with women students,
Mhm.
right? And because he built this like meme page, now that's what he does full time,
Yeah.
right? And like now, so it's like such a cool thing when you can grow through like comedy and just understanding who your people are. So if I was going to start trying to grow my online presence, right? And even though we already have martial arts schools, maybe someone's listening, they already have a school or multiple, but they don't have maybe a big social media following or anything like that. What would you suggest they start with?
I think there's 2 things. I think the first thing is figure out where your customers are. So, I see a lot of business owners go on Instagram where their customers are on LinkedIn. Like they're selling to businesses. You shouldn't be on Instagram. Like your customers just aren't there. So really think about where are your customers? Where are they spending time, both online and in real life? Because my customer is online on Instagram, but in real life, they're in gyms. They're at Jiu-Jitsu Con. They're now at my camps, They're connecting with other women and I need to go meet those people. So, getting really clear on what's the right place to meet those people. And then also, I think leading with value. I mean, it's great to sell products and kind of like you had said, it's better to sell products when the product actually meets a need. Like the person told you, "Hey, I want to start karate because I want to get in great shape or I want to have discipline." And that product actually meets that need. And so that's what we do. We don't sell anything that we don't believe in and that doesn't actually fix the problems for our customer. But even just doing stuff not to sell product. I think it's huge. Like, I wrote this newsletter. It took me an hour 2 weeks ago, and it was like 5 cool things that are happening in the world of women's jiu-jitsu. And it's like a cool vlog that I saw and a amazing Reddit post and this, that, the other thing. And it's like I didn't sell anything, but because I do those kinds of emails, my open rate on my emails is 70%, you know?
Wow, that's
That's like
crazy.
crazy,
Yeah.
right? The open rate on a lot of emails is sub 20%. And it's
Yeah.
because people are tired of just being sold to. People want to have a real conversation. They want their day to be enriched by interacting with you. And so when you think about how do I enrich people's days, whether it's a sale, it's something cool that we're working on, it's a way they can get involved, it's a way they can contribute to the brand. Um, I think that's the key to building a community. People feel like they're connected.
How do you find out where your community is? Like, I know for us, like our people were not really our students, which are or our customers are usually the moms of the, like, little kids, right? Most of our student base is kids. That's mainly who we focus towards. And obviously, we can't focus directly on kids. Oh, well, actually, we can. So we do. We do a lot of programs at schools and daycares go directly to them because that's when we know where they are,
Mhm.
right? But I know that moms of our students for a long time, they only use Facebook. They were a while before they got to Instagram. Now they're
Yeah.
starting to use Instagram. Right? I'm talking about the 35 to 45 to maybe 50-year-old range. Like
Mhm.
they're not really using TikTok. Some of them are, of
Mhm.
course, but majority of them are still have moved over to somewhat to Instagram, but they're still on Facebook. Even though I personally don't really use Facebook as
Mhm.
much, I know that's where they are, so I need to go, right? So if I have a jujitsu school, how do I find out where my people are? Where do I find that watering hole where they're getting together?
Yeah, so I think if it's a jujitsu school,
Yeah,
those people might be in conventional fitness gyms. They might be in functional fitness gyms. Think about the customer archetype and really explore what do they like? You know,
maybe
where are
like
they
CrossFit or something.
yeah, where are they spending their time? Like, what are the components of jujitsu? It's community, so CrossFit, other fitness communities. Maybe it's a hiking community. It's kind of hardcore, it's fighting or movement culture oriented. Like maybe they're in a capoeira place, or I do Latin dance. There's such a dramatic amount of jujitsu athletes in Latin dance
Really
because it's movement
cool.
oriented and like dynamic movement. And so thinking about things that are similar and what that kind of person is, where they're living right now could be helpful. And then I would say if you know one person who's in jujitsu, then ask them, you know,
Mm,
where do you hang out? What do you do? And just keep asking people. And eventually you're going to get some similar answers. And those similar answers are a thread that you pull at and start to throw shit at. And some shit sticks and some doesn't. But
yeah.
I think it's all about iteration is perfection. Like it's just experimenting and see what actually works for your brand and your personality and
Mm.
the message that you have to share.
Cool. So how do you keep your business relationships healthy?
My business relationships
Yeah. So
healthy.
not like you and your boyfriend, but like people that work for you that are a lot of times jujitsu practitioners that are maybe all of them are. Yeah. How
Yeah.
do you keep those relationships healthy?
So I think something that I've really struggled with in building the brand is leadership because I started this business in my early 20s. I'm only 25 and I have people on my team. I have people on my team in their 60s, you know, 60s, 40s, 30s. Everyone is older than me. And so figuring out how do I lead these people when I feel like a little kid has been challenging. But I think that there's 2 things. There's attracting people to you, and then there's how do you treat those people. And I think as a leader, having in mind, I want the best for this person. And can I like spend my time like thinking about what is the best case scenario for this person? Like where does their career go? What do they want? How do I give them more opportunities? How do I invite them to this thing that they wouldn't be able to go to otherwise and have them have a great experience? So I brainstorm about that stuff. I have documents for every single employee about like what I think the vision of their life is and what like they want, you know, based on what they told me
Mm.
and how then it puts me in a position to like set them up for success.
So you keep a document
I
for
have a
every
document.
employee
I have a
of
document.
like all of the things that not maybe not all the things, but a lot of things you've talked about that you think.
No, things that they're good at,
Oh,
things
okay.
that they want, things that they've told me, like, I had an employee who's no longer with us who she wanted to, like, have her own homestead and do YouTube full time and this, that, the other thing, and just be independent. And I was like, I'm going to give you as many opportunities to do that, even if it means you leave the company. And when she told me, hey, Maya, I'm going to go full on in my dream and do YouTube full time, I was like, we'll be your first sponsor.
Yeah.
And I think just supporting people and being like talking the talk and walking the walk and being kind to people and just like having their back in every turn, as long as they're good people and good to you, goes a long way. Um, I think it's just integrity.
I love that. I love that. Super cool. One of the things I started doing this past year is taking time every week to actually talk to each employee individually.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a set meeting with all the head people, like the head instructors, the program directors, where we meet one on one on Zoom, right? But we have a one-on-one meeting. That way they can say things that not in front of other people or they might be embarrassed about.
Mhm.
And we'll talk about what went well, what was the challenge. Usually we'll do some sort of film review. So we'll watch them teach a class and we'll watch a recording of it and see what could have went better, what was really great. And we'll keep this one note file. But not to the extent that you do. I think to the extent that you do of like what they actually like love and want to do like long term. I think that's even better. But the surface level that I do, that's not as
I
good.
feel creepy now
It's
that I
like
said it out loud, but
no, that's amazing. I think, like I mean, you're doing it because you care,
yeah.
right? And you don't wanna forget. Like, as an entrepreneur, you have a million things going on all the time. Like, I keep notes. Like, I probably have, like, 9 keywords about our first conversation we had in my phone. Actually, I know
Yeah.
I have those 9 keywords. Like, right when I left and I got your number and I saved it, I was like, "Okay, what are we talking about this, okay." And, like, I wrote alchemy in my phone, not alchemize, which makes me mad. But, but it just shows that you care, right? When I walk into a new, let's say I'm walking into a school, like an elementary school, okay, and I want to do a martial arts program there. I have in my notes that front desk person's name. I have one in there
Mhm.
what we talked about last time. I know the guidance counselor. I know how many kids they have. I know blah blah blah. Like, and when I go there and I talk with them and I leave, I immediately go in my car and put in as many notes as I possibly can. That when I walk in there, I read it, so I have that top of mind. And I walk in and say, "Hey, Tracy, how you doing? How was the trip to the Bahamas?" And they're like, "Well," they don't remember my name, but then all of a sudden, I remember they went to the trip in the Bahamas. They spent like 2 weeks down the shore over the summertime, like,
Mhm.
and it builds connections so fast, right? And
Yeah.
it's not being deceitful or dishonest. It's just like showing that you care, right? And I think being organized in that way, like actually writing it down, most people don't do that.
I think people just want to be seen and like want to be appreciated, and everyone is walking around just doing stuff wanting to be seen.
Mm.
And I think if you do that for the person who, like, right now, we have amazing people who pick up our stuff, our packages every day. UPS, FedEx, DHL, and USPS. They're all getting gifts from us,
What do
like
you guys give them?
chocolates and
Chocolates.
that kind of thing. It's like, hey, thank you so much for coming and doing this for us every day, and we see you. We appreciate your work and that you're here and you're on time and everything, because that matters to our business. And it's just little things like that, just taking the time to show someone that you appreciate them is huge.
Mm,
It's like massive for all of us who are just in the grind every day and maybe don't get that recognition.
That's also that actually reminded me I should do that for the people who work in my building. The problem is there's always so much turnover. Every 3 weeks, there's like a new person at the front desk. I'm like, how am I supposed to remember this person's name?
Yeah.
When I first moved in my apartment, I got the person chocolates, and then I did it again like a month later, and then there was like literally a new person every 2 weeks. I'm like, forget it. There's no point even like me. There's no point even saying hi to this person. Like I felt so bad because I love building that connection, like knowing the
Yeah.
person's name when I walk in, but it just didn't work. What do you think is one idea people might get wrong about entrepreneurship or about you and your entrepreneur journey?
I think that there's so much content right now about entrepreneurship being easy and about like you're going to make $1 million overnight, and like I'm sure you've seen
Yeah.
all of that like snake oil stuff.
Follow these 5 simple steps to
Yeah,
become a millionaire.
yeah,
Yeah.
like make 10K a month in X amount of time just starting a drop shipping store or
Yep.
whatever. And what I love about that messaging is it gets people in the door of entrepreneurship who maybe would not do it if they knew how hard it was. I would not have done it if I knew how hard it was.
Yeah.
But I think it sets you up for success or for failure if you are expecting like something that has massive impact in the world, or that even just makes an amount of money that you can live on, to emerge overnight. It takes time, and it
Mm,
takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of work on yourself because
mm.
your business is a reflection of you. And if you're like not showing up on time and not being consistent in your own life, and it's all about consistent steps, incremental steps over time. If you can't do that in a small way, there's no way you're going to be able to do that in a big way and create that amount of like energy that's going to create this tidal wave that's going to create a business. And so, um, I think whether you're doing a convenience store or you're building a brand or you're building spaceships, like entrepreneurship is hard for everyone, and it's worth doing still, you know?
Yeah, it's worth doing. I think it's not for everyone. Like,
Agreed.
there's definitely people that should not be doing it, but you have to be willing to deal with tons of rejection. You have to be okay with dealing with loneliness because it could be, and you have to be okay with like, uh, uh. So what did I say? Loneliness, rejection. I guess say those two things. Oh, and like you have to be okay with with many years of not seeing the fruits of your labor,
Mhm.
right? And that's the hardest part. It's like, you go to the gym and it's like you imagine you do an ab workout and you're like, all right, better have a six pack. Like lift it up. Like, okay, well, it's not going to happen, right? You have to go to the gym consistently for 6 months to 2 years before you see any improvement,
Mhm.
right? So same thing when we are growing our business, except you don't have a lot of money and you're working crazy, and and you get rejected all the time. But you have to go. I mean, it depends on the business, but generally it's going to be like 2 to 5 years of complete crap, right,
Yeah.
before anything ever happens. And you have to be willing to do that and just know that's what you're getting into,
Yeah, and
right?
there's the opportunity cost of like, "Oh, I could be doing this and, like, making so much money," right? I could be doing this. And I think that is a challenging thing that you have to face off with as an entrepreneur. Like, you have
Mm.
so many opportunities. It's a challenging thing in life. You have so many opportunities to do things. You can take your life in any direction, but opening one door means you have to close a lot of others. And the entrepreneur door is a big door that's a vacuum that sucks you in and like closes a lot of other doors for a
Yeah,
period of time.
yeah.
And I think there's a lot of questions when you have not made it yet. Um, and I would not think, like, at the stage of business that I am, that I would still have these if I was talking to myself 3 years ago. I
Yeah.
would not think that today I would still have these questions, but you probably have these questions forever. It's like, is it worth it to do this path that I'm doing? You have to face off with that question all the time.
Mhm.
Maybe you have to in a job too, but I think it's different, when you're choosing a less safe path and a less charted path because you have no assurances that it's really gonna pan out for
Yeah,
you.
you have all the people whispering in your ear, like friends or family, like, "You sure you want to do that?" Like, "Oh, but you got your degree in blank," right?
Yeah.
And it's usually the people that are closest to you that are not necessarily purposely going to do it, but those are the ones that usually drag you down, right?
Mhm.
Like, I just decided a couple weeks ago that I was going to be sober for an entire year,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna not have a drink or any substance for an entire year, and starting in the beginning of December. I wanted to like not wait, right? And when I talk about it with my friends, I'll get comments, right? Like, "Oh, it's gonna be boring," right? Like eye roll, or like, "Oh, why do it for a whole year? Why don't you just do it for blank?" And it's like, why are you telling me that? Why don't you just say, "Hey,
Mhm.
Matt, I think that's freaking awesome. Like, you should
Yeah.
definitely do that if that's what you think is important to you," right? We should be always supportive and not just because what happens is if you start to do something different than how they identify you, then they feel like they're leaving you as a friend,
Mhm.
right? And like they feel the relationship feels threatened, and people always want to feel like justified in the decisions that they make. So if you always drank with that person, right,
Mhm.
then they're gonna be like, oh well, maybe that threatens our relationship, right? So it could be usually those are the people that claw you down, that bring you back. And I think for what do you call that? The like crab in a bucket. You ever hear that term? Like the
Yeah.
crab tries to come out and they pull you down. Um, so thank you so much for being on here. If people want to purchase, Alchemize Fightwear products, how do they find you?
Yeah, so they can find us at alchemizefightwear.com, and we do a bunch of events as well. We throw the biggest camps in women's jiu-jitsu. So 200 plus, 300 plus people. We're doing events with over 1,000 people in 2024. Um, about 50% of the tickets are already sold too. So we're haven't even announced 2 other events that are coming, but most of our camps sell out. So if you're new to jiu-jitsu or want to train with women, you can come and attend one of our events.
Beginner friendly, or is this
Beginner friendly,
okay?
and you can learn from some of the best jiu-jitsu instructors in the world. So that's the
Cool.
way to
How do
connect.
they find you?
Um,
Like, what's the website or Instagram or?
yeah, so it's www.alchemizefightwear.com, and Alchemize Fightwear on Instagram and all other socials.
Cool. And then if someone wants to send you an email or message, like from support or something, how do they find you there?
You could send me a message on my personal Instagram. It's at maya.nazareth. Yeah, on IG.
But don't send her a DM after rolling, you freaking creepo.
Like, it's okay. It's just not like, it's just, you want to know what the intention is,
Yeah,
right?
just don't.
Like,
Just don't. All right. Thank you guys for listening. My name is Matthew Brenner with W Dojo. If you have any questions, you can find me on Instagram at blackbeltbrenner1 or email me, Matthew@wdojo.com. Thank you.